Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, the Strait of Hormuz reaches a boiling point. AI and robots hit the physical streets, and we unpack why the wealthiest elites are suddenly erasing their tattoos and their digital footprints.
Yeah, I mean, the contrast is it's pretty staggering when you put it like that.
It really is. So, look, if you're tuning in right now, you know we're here to give you the absolute shortcut to what is actually moving the needle today. Skipping the fluff and just diving into the day's true market and cultural undercurrents.
Right, because we aren't just here to read the news back to you. I mean, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
We are specifically looking for the second-order effects. Who is actually getting rich here? Who is about to get regulated into the ground? And frankly, what is the general consensus just getting entirely wrong today?
Exactly. So let's just jump right into the deepest end of the geopolitical pool, because there is a huge update from the Kobe Sletter on X that is, frankly, sending shockwaves through the macro landscape this morning.
Oh yeah, the Hormuz situation.
Right. President Trump has just convened a White House Situation Room meeting, and the stakes here are, they're immense. We're looking at Iran actively reclosing the Strait of Hormuz. And this is in direct response to the ongoing U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports.
Which is just a massive escalation.
Totally. And here is the real ticking clock, right? And the current ceasefire expires in exactly 3 days. So you add that to the spiking tensions over the uranium enrichment, and, we are at a really severe tipping point.
We really are. But, what is fascinating to me here is the complete disconnect between the political theater of it all and the cascading economic effects that are about to hit us.
How do you mean? Like the supply chain stuff?
Exactly. I mean, This isn't just some abstract political standoff. The Strait of Hormuz is a critical choke point for global supply chains. You're talking about roughly 20% of the world's oil flowing through that one specific corridor.
Right, which obviously spikes gas prices.
Well, yes, but it goes so much deeper than just the price of crude oil. You have to think about the actual physical mechanics of global shipping. When a strait like that shuts down, or even, honestly, when the threat level just rises a bit, the reinsurance markets completely freeze up.
Wait, the insurance on the actual cargo ships?
Yeah, exactly. The premiums just skyrocket overnight. And if a vessel's insurance is suddenly voided in that corridor, freight forwarders panic. They immediately reroute everything around the Cape of Good Hope down in Africa.
Oh, wow. Which adds, like another 2 weeks to the journey?
At least 14 days. And in a global economy that is built entirely on, just-in-time manufacturing, adding 14 days literally breaks the entire assembly line.
Because the parts just aren't there when they need them.
Right. You've got factories in Europe waiting on crucial components that are suddenly stuck on a ship, taking the long way around an entire continent.
Yeah.
So you really have to ask, is a diplomatic breakthrough even structurally possible at this stage? Or is the market just dangerously underpricing the risk of an imminent kinetic conflict?
Yeah, the market hates uncertainty, but they seem to be ignoring this one. But, we have this tendency to view national security threats as these distant things. Like, they happen in foreign straits, thousands of miles away. But the reality is, national security threats are literally sitting in our living rooms right now.
Oh, the smart TV thing.
Yes. Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus and the defense tech company Endural, put out this incredibly viral warning today about smart TVs. He specifically called out major brands, LG, Samsung, you know it.
Yeah, the thread was wild.
It really was. He's warning that unbelievable amounts of sensitive, even classified information are being captured, scraped, and sent back to foreign nations right through these screens in our houses.
Look at the mechanism behind this. It's deeply, deeply unsettling. He's referencing this peer-reviewed study from researchers over at UC Davis and UCL, and they're looking at something called ACR.
Automatic content recognition, right.
Exactly. And to be clear, this isn't like a little webcam built into the bezel watching you eat chips on the couch.
Right.
It is much more insidious than that. It's basically Shazam, but for your television screen. The PV takes these invisible digital fingerprints, like literally sampling the pixels of whatever is being displayed every fraction of a second.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it pings in a massive external server to find a match for those pixels, recording exactly what is on your screen at all times.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to pause you there because, I plug my laptop into my TV all the time to use it as a secondary monitor when I'm working from home. Are you saying the TV hardware itself is completely bypassing my laptop's operating system? Like all my security?
Yes, precisely. The TV's operating system just operates entirely independently of whatever device you plug into that HDMI port.
That is terrifying.
It is. The TV doesn't know the difference between, a sitcom you were streaming and a highly classified drone schematic you have open on your work laptop. A pixel fingerprint is just a pixel fingerprint. It just scrapes it and sends it. Now, my cynical question on this is this just standard, albeit aggressively invasive, corporate data harvesting for targeted advertising? Or is this an actual engineered vector for foreign intelligence gathering?
See, I have to push back on the foreign intelligence angle just a bit because, users treat TVs as totally benign appliances. You plug them in and you forget about them. Would Palmer Luckey really be trying to get the government to ban smart TVs out of, pure altruism?
Do you think there's an ulterior motive?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's the founder of Anduril. His entire business model relies on building U.S. defense tech and autonomous systems. So is he just talking up his own book here, creating a defense narrative to secure more government contracts?
I mean, it could absolutely be both. Corporate synergy doesn't just invalidate the threat entirely. Anduril certainly benefits from a heightened awareness of hardware vulnerabilities, sure, but the vulnerability is undeniably real.
Yeah, the data scraping is happening regardless.
Right. Think about the pandemic. How many defense contractors or aerospace engineers or tech executives started working from home and just casually plugged their secured laptops into a 65-inch commercial smart TV to review proprietary code? We are willingly installing unencrypted black boxes in our homes.
Yeah, we're basically installing black boxes in our living rooms that we have zero control over. But that loss of physical agency is about to scale up dramatically because we aren't just losing control of our data, we are literally handing over the steering wheel now.
Oh, we're moving straight from digital surveillance to physical automation.
Exactly. Let's look at what is happening on the actual ground today. The official robotaxi account from Tesla just officially announced they are rolling out their completely unsupervised, geofenced, autonomous ride-hailing service in Dallas and Houston.
Completely unsupervised.
Yep. No steering wheels being touched, just passengers sitting in the back seat.
Now, if you look at the community reactions online for this, they are almost entirely focused on the cost advantages, right? Like, oh, it's so much cheaper than human drivers. But this raises a really important question about the second-order effects. Who actually loses out here?
Human labor.
Exactly. Human labor. We are shifting the fundamental unit economics of transportation from operational expenses over to capital expenses.
Meaning what, exactly, for the everyday gig worker, like the Uber or Lyft driver?
Meaning you completely remove the single most expensive and complicated component of a rideshare transaction, which is the human being sitting behind the wheel.
Right.
A human needs healthcare. A human needs to make minimum wage. A human physically needs to sleep. A robotaxi just charges itself during off-peak hours and then drives 20 hours a day. The very moment the algorithm is deemed safe enough by local regulators, the entire labor market for gig drivers begins to collapse.
Wow.
It is really the beginning of physical obsolescence for just an entire class of workers.
And it isn't just cars navigating traffic either. If you want to see how fast the actual physical hardware is moving, look at Kailai Chan's post today. There's this Chinese humanoid robot built by the smartphone maker Honor and Huawei, and it just shattered the human half-marathon world record.
I saw that video.
It's crazy, right? It finished in 50 minutes and 26 seconds. And just for some context, the absolute fastest human record ever is just under 58 minutes.
Okay, but let's zero in on the nuance there, because the devil is always in the details with these tech demos. The video footage clearly shows that the robot was teleoperated by a human.
Right. It wasn't fully autonomous.
Exactly. And it required human engineering teams to literally run up and swap its batteries out during the middle of the race. And crucially, it literally crashed just meters before the finish line.
Yeah, it took a hard fall.
It required a human rescue team to get it back up on its feet.
Hmm.
So yes, it is an impressive mechanical tech demo, but it is not exactly the Terminator coming for our construction jobs tomorrow morning.
Okay, I hear that, but to me, it's kind of like the early days of spaceflight. The rocket might explode upon landing, sure, but the fact that it successfully made the journey through the atmosphere in the first place proves the hardware is advancing terrifyingly fast.
It is moving fast, I'll give you that.
I mean, they are utilizing advanced liquid cooling systems just to keep the mechanical joints from melting at those sustained running speeds. The fact that it beat the pinnacle of human athletic achievement by 7 minutes, even with the battery swaps and the crash, that's a profound signal. And this highly visible physical automation, it's triggering a severe panic about human obsolescence across the board.
Oh, it absolutely is. And the panic is rapidly moving up the socioeconomic ladder, too.
Right.
Because it is no longer just warehouse workers and gig drivers looking over their shoulders. It is the white-collar workers now.
Right. Which brings us to this really fierce debate playing out today between the absolute titans of artificial intelligence. Jan LeCun, who is the chief AI scientist at Meta, publicly called out Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei today.
This is a fascinating exchange.
It was. So Amodei has been doing this massive media circuit lately, basically claiming that 50% of white-collar jobs, we're talking tech, entry-level, legal work, consulting, finance, that they will entirely vanish in the next 1 to 5 years. And LeCun just came out swinging.
He really did.
He essentially stated that Dario knows software, sure, but knows absolutely nothing about the macroeconomic effects of technological revolutions on the labor market.
And this exchange is vital because it cuts right through that insulated Silicon Valley echo chamber. LeCun's argument is basically that tech CEOs are highly incentivized to sell a narrative of omnipotence.
Right.
They want you to think their AI is a god.
Makes their valuations go up.
Exactly. He specifically names actual economists in his post tele. Philippe Aghion, Eric Brynjolfsson, David Otter, people who've spent decades studying automation through hard historical data. And there's a crucial distinction here that the tech industry consistently misses. Displacing entry-level tasks is not the same thing as destroying aggregate jobs.
Okay, can you break down that distinction for us? How does displacing a task not eventually destroy the job itself?
It's a classic economic principle, often tied to something called the Jevons paradox. Let's say AI can perfectly automate the task of drafting a standard legal brief. The tech CEO looks at that and says, great, we don't need lawyers anymore, the job is dead.
Right.
But the economist looks at the exact same data and says, wait, if the lawyer doesn't have to spend 10 hours drafting that one brief, their productivity skyrockets.
Yeah.
And because their productivity skyrockets, the actual cost of their legal services drops.
Ah, I see.
Right? Because the cost of legal services drops. Thousands of small businesses who previously couldn't afford a lawyer suddenly enter the market to hire one. Task displacement makes the worker way more efficient, which actually often increases the aggregate demand for that specific profession.
That makes a lot of sense. But, the developers who are actually building these AI systems are themselves being strictly filtered by the market right now. We have this really fascinating insight today from Furled, the creator of Keras, on how the AI labor market is actually functioning behind the scenes.
Yeah, the resume filtering.
Exactly. He points out that when tech companies are looking at deep learning resumes, the ultimate signal of a great candidate right now is whether they list JAX instead of PyTorch as their primary framework.
And for those who aren't deep in the code, this is kind of the great divide of our current era. PyTorch is the absolute, undisputed industry standard. If you want to build a product today and ship it to consumers quickly, you use PyTorch. But JAX represents deep mathematical systems-level thinking. It is really about pure math and functional transforms.
Okay, so for the non-software engineers listening to us right now, give me an analogy here. What does that actually mean in practice?
Think of PyTorch like building a house with prefabricated Lego bricks, right? It is fast, it is highly reliable, and everyone in the industry knows exactly how those bricks snap together.
Okay.
JAX is like being handed the raw chemical formula for plastic and being told to invent an entirely better brick from scratch.
Oh, wow.
It requires a physicist's understanding of the underlying mathematics. So Chola is basically saying that listing JAX signals a candidate who understands the foundational physics of artificial intelligence, not just someone who knows how to operate the machinery. So you have to ask yourself, which one do you think the market actually rewards long-term? The mechanic who turns the wrench or the physicist who invents the engine?
Yeah, it is always the physicist who designs the engine, right? But let's look at the asymmetry of power here for a second. We have these brilliant physicists building this tech, but then we have the massive corporations wielding that tech over our daily lives, and crucially, how they actively use it against us.
Yeah, the data hoarding.
It's wild. Has Hantakser posted a viral thread today exposing just the terrifying extent of Google's data hoarding. If you are carrying a smartphone in your pocket right now, listen to this. We are talking about every search, every voice recording, every single GPS coordinate since 2015, all tied directly to your real name.
It's unbelievable.
And studies out of Trinity College Dublin show that Android devices ping Google servers every 4.5 minutes. Even when the phone is sitting completely idle on your desk, or even if you've supposedly, opted out.
Well, the opt-out is a complete illusion. I mean, even with these tech conglomerates paying out hundreds of millions of dollars in these multi-state privacy settlements over the last few years, it changes nothing.
Because it's just a drop in the bucket for them.
Exactly. It is simply factored in as a routine cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Data is the ultimate currency of the 21st century. A company will gladly pay a $500 million regulatory fine if the GPS coordinates they illegally harvested generate $5 billion in targeted ad revenue. Or, more importantly, if it perfectly trains their next-generation AI models.
Right.
Your past GPS coordinates aren't just a history book for them. They are the literal training data for the predictive models that will dictate your future behavior.
And they don't just use this data and attention power to sell you running shoes either. They use it as an actual weapon. This brings us to a massive revelation today from tech emails. They surfaced a highly confidential internal email from Mark Zuckerberg from August 2022.
This blew my mind.
Right. So Zuckerberg logged into Snapchat, looked around their Spotlight and Stories features, and found content that he explicitly described internally as porny and inappropriate, being algorithmically targeted at a younger audience.
And for anyone listening who has kids, this is the part that should truly terrify you. Because here is the elite playbook in action. When Zuckerberg saw that wildly inappropriate content being served to minors on a rival app, he didn't flag it out of a deep sense of morality or, child safety.
No, not all.
He flagged it internally as competitive leverage. He was essentially shocked that Snapchat wasn't facing the exact same media and regulatory scrutiny that Meta was currently enduring.
And to give some context here, this email only just surfaced during the massive 2026 multi-district litigation. For those following along, that is basically a giant combined lawsuit from dozens of U.S. states simultaneously suing social media platforms over adolescent addiction and mental health harms.
Right. And the release of this email perfectly illustrates how these titans actually operate behind closed doors. They aren't trying to fix the toxic algorithms shaping your children's brains. They're hoarding the fact that their competitors have the exact same toxic algorithms.
It's basically corporate warfare.
It is corporate warfare masked behind the veneer of child safety. They track everything, they actively monitor their competitors' weaknesses, and they stockpile these vulnerabilities to deploy strategically when the regulatory pressure gets too hot for their own platforms.
It really is an incredible asymmetry of power. You have massive tech conglomerates wielding billions in funding and petabytes of data, but completely failing to create positive societal outcomes. And unfortunately, that exact same asymmetry where throwing a mountain of funding at a system completely fails to deliver results is bleeding heavily into the public sector and our class divides.
This is where the macro data gets incredibly grim, to be honest, because the numbers simply do not align.
Yeah, Kane posted a brilliant breakdown today of the education system in California, and the underlying data is just staggering. Over the last decade, per pupil spending in California has shot up 102% to $18,600 per single student.
That's a massive increase.
It completely crushes the 35% inflation rate over that exact same period. They threw unprecedented amounts of cash at the public school system, yet the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the NAEP reading and math scores, which are essentially the gold standard for testing, are dropping sharply, especially in the post-pandemic era.
And we have to look at this strictly through the cold lens of input versus output. Systemically, more funding simply does not equal more education if the underlying mechanism is fundamentally broken.
Where is the money going then?
Well, how does a bureaucracy absorb a 102% budget increase without a single point of improvement in test scores? It doesn't go to new textbooks. It doesn't go to better classroom supplies. It gets instantly swallowed by skyrocketing pension liability.
All right.
It goes to layers upon layers of administrative middle management, goes to wildly expensive proprietary compliance software that teachers are basically forced to use.
So the funding never actually reaches the student in any meaningful way.
Exactly. The data disparity is glaring. You double the financial input, and the actual product, the educational attainment of the students, declines. It is a profound misallocation of capital. The bureaucracy creates this administrative arms race that just absorbs the funding increase long before it ever breaches the classroom doors in a way that impacts actual learning.
It really highlights the divide between the resources available at the top and the actual outcomes experienced by everyday people at the bottom. Which actually brings us to our final story today. And honestly, it serves as the ultimate physical symbol of this wealth divide.
The tattoo removal.
Yeah. Uncle Doomer pointed out that Pete Davidson, the comedian and actor, just spent roughly $200,000 to have his extensive collection of tattoos surgically removed. The recent pictures of him show his arms and chest are practically a blank canvas again.
And this is what cultural commentators are currently calling a cultural rug pull. If you think about the trajectory of the last 20 years, celebrities, professional athletes, the cultural elite, they aggressively push tattoos into the mainstream.
Right, it used to be counterculture.
It started as something edgy, highly expressive, and fundamentally anti-establishment. But now that it is completely ubiquitous, now that every barista and accountant has a full sleeve of tattoos, the ultra-wealthy are paying absolute fortunes to buy back the quiet luxury of a blank canvas.
But wait, isn't this just the standard life cycle of all fashion and trends? Like, the elite adopt something unique to stand out, the masses eventually copy it, and once it is available at every mall in America, the elite just abandon it to find a new expensive way to signal their high status.
You are absolutely right about the traditional fashion life cycle. But the stakes here are fundamentally different. I mean, this isn't a billionaire buying a different brand of luxury handbag when the old brand gets too popular.
Right, you can't just take a tattoo off like a shirt.
Exactly. This is permanent ink physically injected deep into the dermis of the human body. The elite can casually afford a $250,000 multi-year laser removal process to reverse the physical trend. But the working class is completely stuck with it.
Wow.
What was aggressively sold to the public as vital self-expression is now being viewed by high society commentators as a social contagion that only the ultra-rich can afford to cure. It is really the ultimate flex of the modern era, buying your way out of permanence.
Buying your way out of permanence. That is a heavy, lingering thought to land on today. So bringing all these complex threads together, from global shipping choke points and AI labor panics to invisible surveillance and cultural rug pulls, what is your strict prediction for tomorrow? Where does the data actually point us next?
If you look at the imminent collision of these specific trends, I think we are heading for a severely reactionary, heavy-handed regulatory crackdown.
Across the board.
Across the board. On one side, you have physical automation accelerating rapidly. Tesla's unsupervised robotaxis hitting Texas streets, Chinese humanoid robots pushing the boundaries of physical labor. On the other side, you have invisible hardware surveillance, like the smart TVs scraping your living room data. And you add to that the geopolitical powder keg of the Hormuz ceasefire, expiring in just 3 days. So the prediction is this. Governments will panic. They will attempt to simultaneously regulate domestic labor disruptions and national security data leaks, and they'll likely use the geopolitical crisis as the necessary excuse to bring the hammer down on the major tech platforms. The cost of corporate compliance is going to absolutely skyrocket, and the open internet, as we currently know it, is going to get locked down very tightly.
Man, the squeeze really is coming from all sides, and the walls are closing in. Well, we have seen clearly today that the wealthiest individuals in our society are actively buying their way out of permanent choices, whether it is erasing a $200,000 sleeve of tattoos or aggressively hiding their digital footprints from Google servers. So, as you navigate this rapidly automating, highly surveilled world, ask yourself, what permanent physical or digital markers are you freely accumulating right now that you might desperately want to erase in 10 years?
That is definitely a question worth answering today before the system just answers it for you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, that is all for today's analysis. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Daily Vibecasting.